Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Joe. I know the world is currently in a panic. If you don't know what I'm talking about the coronavirus. Everyone is freaking out. Toilet paper is out. I don't know why, but everyone is stocking up as if everything is coming to an end. And it's scary to see everybody freaking out so much. I know it's a serious thing. I know it's scary. And it's kind of brought a lot of bad news into our world right now. And so that's why I'm here to bring you some happy news. And all the good news is going to put a smile on your face still. That's what this is about. I'm not here to rain on your parade anymore. I'm here to lift you up, make sure you're having a good day by sharing these great stories with you. But since the coronavirus is kind of a huge deal right now, I thought I would share a couple stories about the coronavirus, but of course they are positive, they are good, there is some good things that are happening about it, so keep your hopes up. I'm going to share this first one. In a hearing in Capitol Hill just the other day, a congresswoman managed to secure a verbal confirmation from the director of the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, that he would use his power under law to make coronavirus testing free for all Americans. So no matter your insurance plan, no matter anything like that, all coronavirus testing is going to be free for Americans. I think that is definitely a positive thing within this whole ordeal. So her name is Katie Porter. We have her to thank for the free testing of coronavirus in America. So she gave this really great argument for the free COVID-19 testing to CDC Director Dr. Robert Redfield and also Robert Kedlak, the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. This was during just a House Oversight Committee just this past week. She actually used a whiteboard to tally up the average of out-of-pocket cost of virus testing and ER visit in the U.S., basically showing that some Americans would not have the money to get the testing and they might stay home rather than getting tested. She then cited a statute from the Code of Federal Regulation, which allows the CDC to authorize payment for the care and treatment of individuals subject to medical examination, quarantine, isolation, and conditional release. After quite some time and just kind of pressing into them, then they were willing to offer free testing and treatment to all Americans, regardless of insurance. So no matter what, the answer is yes. That's what they say. That is in go now. So if you do need to go get tested, you can go get tested, and it's going to be free. You don't have to pay for it. So now, one more positive story about the coronavirus. I have to add this in. So $100 million has gone towards speeding up the coronavirus treatments and response, and this is all thanks to the Gates Foundation. So they wanted to help the speed up response to the COVID-19 epidemic. So Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is funding a new initiative dedicated to identifying, assessing, developing, and scaling up treatments for this virus. $100 million towards it. So we're really hoping that it's going to make a difference. So the COVID-19 Therapeutic Accelerator is being funded by the Gates Foundation, London-based research charity Wellcome, and MasterCard. They will be playing the catalytic role in accelerating and evaluating new and repurposed drugs and biologics to treat patients with COVID-19 as soon as possible in this immediate term, as well as other viral pathogens in the long term as well. So currently there are no broad spectrum antivirals or immune therapies available to fight against this, as we all know. But the Gates Foundation and Wellcome are each contributing up to about $50 million, while the MasterCard Impact Fund has committed up to $25 million. And then the Gates Foundation's funding is part of its up to $100 million commitment to the accelerator. So they are trying to do as much as they can. The foundation's $100 million commitment is also being used to finance public health responses in the greater Seattle area and protective measures for at-risk populations in Africa. So this money is kind of going to some different directions, but they are hoping that it is going to help. It is going to help speed up this process, and we can all keep our fingers crossed and hope. But I thought I would add a little bit of light to this panic time that we're all kind of dealing with right now. There is some positives in this. People are taking action to help speed up the process so we can shut this thing down, get it under control, figure it out. And then, of course, it is definitely positive news that all Americans can get free testing. But that's enough about the coronavirus. That is enough about all of that. I'm here now. Happy news. Nothing else. So let's start with this pretty cool story. A man has launched kind of an Uber Eats style service, and it rescues surplus event food and delivers it to charities. What a cool idea, right? His name is Tony Colley, and just about 3 years ago, he actually didn't have enough money to feed himself, and he wanted to make sure that people don't have to suffer like he did. So this is kind of when he came up with the B12 Give, it's called, kind of like an Uber Eats style project, and it rescues leftover food from catering events and just donates it to homeless shelters, food pantries, charities, anything that needs the food. B12 Give can take that leftover food over to. He launched this project just last May, but he picked up and delivered more than 11,000 pounds of surplus food to charities throughout the greater Toronto area, actually. This was kind of inspired. He wanted to start B12 Give after he landed a job as a part-time event manager for a catering company. Throughout his time at this job, he was really upset. It kind of took a toll on him to see the amount of surplus food that was thrown out at the end of an event. So he actually started delivering meals to shelters on his bike after each event, just doing kind of what he could. But now retailers are participating in the B12 Give subscription service. You can simply send a text to him whenever they have food to pick up. He will drive the food over to the charities within the hour. B12 is the first barrier-free food division program in Canada, but it is going to be everywhere. And I just thought it was such a cool idea. I couldn't help but share. I mean, of course, there's so many foods that get thrown out and we don't even realize it. So definitely a cool idea. B12 Give. Now, my next story is about a Texas coffee shop, and this Texas coffee shop is particularly being praised for building its business around hiring young workers, but not just any young workers that have aged out of the foster care system. This cafe is called La La Land Kindness Cafe in Dallas, and they have really gone out of their way to hire 9 former foster kids who are facing troubled times after turning 18 years old. You know, getting out of that foster care system once you're 18, you're kind of on your own. It's scary. That's hard. You need money. So this coffee shop has gone kind of above and beyond to make sure that these kids can come and work there. So they have 9 workers at the moment, 9 former foster kids. Because, many foster kids are left without any support system once they get out of the foster care system. They need money. A lot of them end up on the streets because they don't have a means for money. But Francois Relini wanted to do something about it. He is 24 years old. He's an entrepreneur, and he wanted to launch the La La Land business model after he attended an informational meeting for a local nonprofit serving foster kids in Texas. Not only has this restaurant served as a place of employment for the at-risk youth, it's done more than that. It's become a safe place and community support system for all of the employees. So it's not just helping them, making sure that they have the money to get by, but it's offering them a support system, because once you're out of the system, the foster system, then, you're on your own. So a job and a support system, you can't get much better than that. He says, we're not in the business of coffee. We just serve coffee. We're definitely in the business of kindness. I love it. Business of kindness. You cannot go wrong with that. He hopes that his cafe will inspire other small businesses to adopt similar initiatives as well. One of the employees, her name is Sierra Morton. She's 20 years old. She overcame homelessness and depression after joining the La La Land workforce just this past year. She says this experience has been completely life-changing. She says, I have people to believe in me and support me. I've never had that kind of support in my life. So I've been able to believe in myself and realize what I want in life and chase after it. Pretty cool. I guess if you're ever in Dallas, go check it out. La La Land Kindness Cafe. They are in the business of kindness, not coffee. I love it. All right, it's time for a little bit of a break. Don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have more amazing feel-good stories that's going to lift up your day. No matter what you've been going through, they're going to put a smile on your face. So stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
We are back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alyssa Joe. I promise you feel-good stories that are going to lift your day up, and that's exactly what I'm here to do. My next one is particularly about a pizzeria and a 18-year-old boy named Dalton Schaefer, and he broke the rules of this pizzeria. He drove 3.5 hours to deliver a pizza to a family. Why would you drive 3.5 hours to deliver a pizza to a family? Well, this story is pretty cool. So, Julie and Rich Morgan, they were reminiscing about the legendary pizzas that are served up at Steve's Pizza Place in Battle Creek, Michigan. They said it's been about 25 years since they lived in Michigan. But no matter the distance, they loved this restaurant. They loved the setting, the perfect slice of pizza. They say, we were young and money was tight, but every payday, Rich would pick up Steve's Pizza for dinner. You know, that was just their thing. They loved it. This is in a Facebook post. She writes, I can't possibly describe how delicious this pizza is, but several moves and all these years later, it is still the gold standard, and we've never found a better pizza yet. Rich has frequently critiqued other pizza as good, but it's not Steve's. So you can just see where this is going, I'm sure. So Julie and Rich were actually planning on visiting Battle Creek for Julia's birthday. But as their, time away kind of got closer, an unexpected cancer diagnosis left Rich in hospice. She says, we talked about seeing the leaves and the lakeshore, but that was secondary to our planned visit to Steve's. Instead, I took Rich to the ER, where he landed in ICU for 5 days, and where we learned the news that his cancer battle was coming to an end. So sad. So Julie's father called Steve's Pizza in hopes that they could get a letter, a text message, a phone call from the restaurant. He just wanted something kind of lift their spirits. But this is when 18-year-old Dalton Schaefer answered the phone instead. So he kind of listened to the whole story. Julie's dad kind of told him the whole story. Immediately, I guess, Dalton asked, what kind of pizzas do they like? Julie's father emphasized that they lived in Indianapolis, which is 225 miles away from Battle Creek. But Dalton didn't care. So they had a very firm takeout-only rule. So not only did he drive 3.5 hours, which I think is definitely against the rules for pizza delivery companies. They do not deliver that far. But Steve's Pizza doesn't deliver at all. It is a takeout only. They don't do delivery. But he did not care. He wanted to be delivering 2 pepperoni pizzas to the couple's house. And he did it. He closed the store for the night, and he drove 3.5 hours to deliver this pizza. He's true to his word. He arrived at the house. So the next thing on her Facebook post says, "So while Rich and I slept at 2:30 a.m., Dalton rolled into our driveway, left the car running, and delivered 2 extra special pizzas to my waiting family. He told them we were in his prayers and offered to help in any way he could." Says, "My dad offered to put him up in a hotel, but he refused and immediately left for the return trip home because he had to work the next day." I just got goosebumps. I think this is so sweet. This family, the Morgan family, is just praising about this pizzeria and their compassion and everything that Dalton did. It was just amazing, good deed. And Dalton says, "I just wanted to do that for them. I just wanted to make them happy." So as a means of expressing their gratitude, Julie posted the photo of the legendary pizza to Facebook. She said all of this stuff, and she also said, "I'm beyond overwhelmed and humbled by this act of genuine kindness. Dalton brought our family so much joy and the best pizza in the world at a really difficult time. Well, thank you hardly seems adequate. From the bottom of my heart, thank you, Dalton, for making your epic middle-of-the-night pizza delivery." That is definitely the most epic pizza delivery I've ever heard of. Now, my next story is about an American who is fighting to be the first American amputee to compete in the Olympics. His name is Blake Leeper, and his lack of legs have never stopped him from pursuing his passion, his dream, and that is sports. He is now fighting to become the first American amputee to participate in the Olympics. He really discovered his passion for track and field back in college. He's gone on to become a Paralympic champion, an international silver and bronze medalist. So he's definitely put in his work. So he's 30 years old. He's a double amputee, and he's been denied a chance to compete for Team USA in the Tokyo 2020 Olympics alongside the other athletes because of the World Athletics rule that his prosthetic running blades gave him an unfair advantage over his competitors. So that did not stop him from continuing to fight. He filed for an appeal with the Court of Arbitration for Sport, the CAS, and to let him compete. He wants to fight for this. So he says, World Athletics' decision to bar me from participating in the World's Champions was a blow to all disabled athletes, but I will not be deterred. I trust in CAS to recognize that I do not have any advantage over able-bodied athletes. I just want a fair chance to compete. For as long as I can remember, I have dreamed of participating in the Olympics with the best runners in the world, and I have shown myself capable of competing with them. But I will need the help of the court to make my dream a reality. Well, I am rooting for you, Blake. I hope that this falls through. I think that'll be so cool to have an American amputee compete in the Olympics and just fight for it. To see his fight to get there, I think that's half the fun. That's half the great story right there. So we'll stay tuned for that. See if Blake gets into that Olympics. I sure hope he does. Well, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, is doing what he can to help the crisis of homelessness by donating nearly about 300 state-owned buildings 4 shelters. So there's about 286 state-owned buildings to be exact. These properties are at no cost, and they're just to help out the people that are sleeping on the streets. He says, let's call it what it is, a disgrace that the richest state in the richest nation is failing to properly house, heal, and humanely treat so many of its own people. He says, the rampant homelessness problem in California is normally attributed to a lack of low-income housing options. But now he's proposed $750 million for the purpose of getting this kind of housing built and getting people in as fast as possible. He is trying to really attack this homelessness crisis. He said this is on top of the $1.6 billion that has already been allocated for homeless services and other projects. The state said that they would offer the properties to local governments for $1 leases, and that they marked $650 million in state emergency homeless aid to build out sites. But the local governments are charged with reviewing the sites and making final decisions about housing people there. The population in U.S. For homelessness keeps growing. As of right now, they're saying it's about 100,000 individuals, with 41,000 of those being chronically homeless over a long period of time. He also called for allowing exemptions from the state's stringent environment regulations so that homeless shelters can be built more quickly, therefore obviously speeding up the process and reducing some red tape. He's just trying to do what he can to get people in as quick as possible. Okay, it's time for a little bit of a break, but don't go anywhere. You know I have some more amazing stories to share with you, so stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alyssa Joe. Okay, I'm going to jump into some more cool stories for you. I actually have a little article here about the best things about aging. This is all voted by people over the age of 50. I thought I would share this with you because age is inevitable. We're all aging at some point, we're all growing older each and every day. Others like that more than other people. Who knows, right? But the thing is I think some of these things about aging are pretty great, and these are all voted by people over the age of 50, and I just thought they might put a little bit of a smile on your face to something that, we might not all be so happy about. And that's just life itself. We all have to get older. We all have to keep aging. But there are some really great things about aging. We have to accept the changes in our body and our lifestyle, and sometimes that can be really hard to swallow for some people. I guess there's an average of about 5,400 Google searches every month for best anti-aging cream. We all don't want to look older. Maybe some of us want to get older, but we don't want to look older. And then once we get older, we definitely don't want to be older. We want to be younger. It's funny how that always works, right? When we're young, we always pretend that we're so much older. then when we get old, we're like, I wish I could just be young again. So there were some pretty cool statistics recently that revealed that the number of over 85s is set to increase from 1.6 million in 2018 to 3 million by 2043. As more people reach their silver senior years, they're calling it, it's time to celebrate aging and the benefits that it brings. And I have to agree with that. So there was a recent survey of 2,000 adults over the age of 50 that kind of uncover some different perceptions of aging. It's kind of aimed to discover the things that they liked about being older and the benefits that, we all get to look forward to as we grow older. I thought it'd put a smile on your face. So basically these people were given a set of questions and a list of aspects of aging to choose from. So about 25% of respondents felt very positively about aging. Nearly half of the women, so about 47%, either agreed or somewhat agreed that their self-confidence has grown with age. And 41% also felt their sense of fulfillment has increased as well. But 43% of men also believe their self-confidence had increased, and 40% believe their sense of fulfillment has developed as well. So what are the best things about aging? These are voted by all the people. They say life experience, being comfortable in your own skin, having a greater sense of gratitude for the smaller things in life, independence and freedom, and ability to let things go. All really crucial things, in my opinion, that all get better with age. So a lot of them had a positive outlook on getting older, and that might surprise a lot of people. But most of it was all positive. They were kind of all happy with where they were at, which I thought was kind of cool, because I always see people, like they said, what's the best anti-aging cream is a huge search on the internet every single day. But there are so many positive aspects of aging, and we might as well embrace them and think about the happiness of aging, because aging is inevitable. So I thought I would share that with you. Now, my next story is about a renewable energy startup company, and they've come up with a low-cost, zero-emission solution to, the issues surrounding what happens when the sun is not shining and the wind isn't blowing. The more that we kind of embrace clean energy like solar and wind, the more we must embrace something, kind of less clean, and that's diesel fuel or batteries. In a building cut off from a reliable grid powered by fossil fuel, diesel generators might be used to convert hours of darkness when solar panels cease providing electricity. An alternative to this is to store the energy generated from the sun during the day in batteries. But along with representing a serious recycling problem, of course, batteries require rare earth minerals that are obtained from environmentally destructive mining operations. Think about it. It all kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? They say batteries are very expensive to store power for a 24-hour period. If you want to store a lot of renewable energy, the most cost-efficient way of storing this is thermal energy. So the former CEO of a battery company, his name is Jonas, helped start this kind of remarkable energy storage project back in 2016. He came on board and they were looking into some thermal storage technology. So Jonas worked with Azelio, who adapted an old Volvo patent industry-first thermal energy storage system that will basically allow people to keep the energy that their standard PV solar panels generate during the day so they can use it in the evenings as well. Instead of the critical energy storage component using rare and expensive minerals. So the Azelio system uses recycled aluminum, which basically emits nothing. It's much cheaper than lithium, and it can last like 62,000 years. So how can you go wrong with that, right? So Jonas says, when we started the project, we had a conversion unit that converts high temperatures into electricity. This device was called a Stirling generator. And at first they would use biogas from landfills, water purification units, and from manure in a combustion engine to generate electricity. But after running numerous computer simulations on cost and energy capacity, they determined that the aluminum was the best choice. Photons that are absorbed by solar panels on your roof enter the system where an aluminum alloy is heated, so it moves from a solid to a liquid. So this allows for the storage of an incredibly dense amount of energy within the material, which can be sent as heat into the Stirling generator and turned into electricity on demand. This is with zero emissions and at a very low cost. Pretty interesting, hey? So this is a direct contrast to fossil fuels, uranium rods or pellets, or diesel fuel, because the energy in the aluminum can constantly be melted and hardened again to produce or store energy. It has high energy density. The material has the ability to store energy for an extended period of time, while the aluminum suffers no degradation in capacity over time. Pretty interesting stuff. The technology would prove to be ideal in some parts of the world where grid reliability is low. So like in Southern Africa, this is where Jonas estimates that people only have access to a stable power grid 45% of the time. So Azaleo's thermal storage would allow for people to implement solar into a community, an industry, in their homes, or just to defend against failing or unreliable grids. And Jonas says it's becoming more and more normal even in the developed world. So, he says in his home country of Sweden, during the long winter, trees knock out power all the time, forcing, rural communities to switch to diesel generators or similar interventions, sometimes for long periods of time, like weeks. They say our system can give you decentralized power based on solar and wind, so you can build a local microgrid that provides you with almost everything you need 24 hours a day. One of the really, really cool things about Azaleo's system is that, in theory, it's as scalable as necessary, from 100 kilowatts per hour up to 100 megawatts per hour and even more. So this is maximized for solar power. It can easily work the same way for tidal or hydropower, biofuels, and wind. Most city or town grids are split up into multiple components that feed off of, support, and borrow from one another to remain stable. So normal solar power that utilizes energy from the sun and sells the excess into the grid before later buying back from the grid at nighttime. This is where Azaleo's thermal storage can fit into the baseload power of modern established grid as much or as little as required. So that could be, 10% of total power or 90%. Doesn't matter. So Azaleo is conducting 3 verification tests this year, basically in Sweden at first, and then there's going to be 2 others in partnership with renewable energy companies. So in March, they are going to be integrating this thermal storage technology at the massive Noor Solar Power Complex in Morocco, and they're kind of teaming up with a lot of people to try to launch this in some countries as quickly as they can. They said in 2025, with what we have promised to the market for the cost of electricity coming out of the system, we can possibly compete with large-scale installations where we need to power a whole city. There you have it. More environmental energy things. People are just going always above and beyond, figuring out new things. It's so cool to listen to these scientific stories. At least I love listening to them. But that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening to GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alyssa Joe. I had an amazing time sharing these stories with you today. As always, do not forget to hit that subscribe button, like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. It's greatly appreciated. Till next time, thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find the show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from sex and relationships to health and wellness, life and happiness, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts Life and Happiness Podcast.